Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all kind of recovered from the chocolate pudding we had for dessert. It is my pleasure to welcome Liza Jonson to the stage to talk about redirecting capital to scale sustainability and drive change. Before we start, though, is it okay if I share with the audience it was your birthday yesterday?
Yeah.
And your first trip to Toronto.
Yeah.
And where did you go?
Toronto Raptors, of course.
And they beat the Boston Celtics.
Yeah. Best night in a long time. We had so much fun.
Really?
Yeah, it was great.
I love it. Well, welcome here this afternoon, and a little bit about our speaker. Liza is the CEO of Swedbank Robur. It's one of Scandinavia's largest mutual fund managers, about $240 billion USD under management. And Liza is one of the most significant female leaders in the world, I would say, leading a group that large. We had some discussion about her tenure in the field, and so we landed on 25 years in the financial industry, and she's been focusing on innovation and sustainability for many of those years. She's been appointed as the CEO of the year and has been ranked one of the most influential women in Sweden. So congratulations for that recognition. She's a member of the board of Fund Companies Association, and she was elected as chair of the board of the Fund Companies Association in 2020. In 2018, she was appointed as one of two business delegates in the government's Agenda 2030 delegation. We'll talk a little bit about that. And Liza is also part of Stockholm Sustainable Finance Center's advisory board, a member of several national and international collaboration forums. One we'll maybe talk about is Climate Action 100 Plus, Net Zero Asset Managers, and Bloomberg Economic Forum. So, congratulations on all of those things and the fact that you have such a massive fund, $240 billion USD. I don't know where to start, so perhaps I'll ask you to talk a little bit of and about sustainability versus ethics and how you might unpack that a little bit.
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure to be here and speak to all of you. I can definitely speak about ethics and sustainability, but just to put it back in a perspective, because we were chatting before, I think that sustainability is absolutely core to a long-term financial performance. And the reason why, sustainability has become sort of politicized lately, especially in the US. And we were talking about the challenges when we started to transform. And I'm not just going to speak about the capital that Swedbank Robur manages, but also the entire Swedish mutual fund business. And in the beginning, when we transformed the capital, there's been a lot of bumps on the road. And one of them has been that people tend to think about sustainable investment equal mark ethics. And I think that's what we have to move away from. It's not about ethical principles when you invest sustainably long term. It's not whether you like alcohol or tobacco. It's much wider than that. It's much more common sense. It's about how you invest for the people and on the planet, and how you actually secure the value of a future company who will actually buy your products in the future. Consumers are getting more and more aware of how things are produced. European investors, even if they wanted to, they are not going to be able to invest in your company unless you have a very sustainable strategy and that you actually report on those metrics, considering how the EU regulation is really fast forwarding all sustainability criteria. And the investors, we have this huge, the largest shift of capital from the people born in the 40s to the younger generation now. And they are placing extreme demands on how the performance is generated. So it's a changing world on so many aspects. So sustainable investment is the only way forward.
This might get people's attention after lunch. I may have to get them to get up and run around a little bit, but we spoke in the green room about an American election in 3 weeks. Independent of what former President Trump has overtured or not overtured, do you see any threat to sustainability and the massive amounts of investments going in there? What would there be any influence?
Of course, I see threats. Of course, I see enormous challenges. But I think there's also some light in the tunnel that regardless who sits in the White House, what we're seeing on the ground when we are actually talking to the companies, it's a completely different story because they are transforming their businesses. They are putting sustainability as core of their strategies. So we're meeting something different than we actually read in the newspaper. So it's not all black and white or not all black, regardless what happens. So there's still a lot of motion happening.
So you're describing that industry is leading this.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it is the right thing to do and it's sustainable.
Yeah, I think because they're seeing the value, the financial value. I mean, you have to be honest. That's what they're looking for. But they see what's happening. They also have to limit their risks. And sustainability. I mean, it's when you speak about it. For me, it's a risk factor. It's the short-term risks. I mean, if you have a poor governance process in your company and something happens, well, you know what happens to your stock quote. So it's short-term risk mitigation. And then it's long-term risk mitigation to actually make sure that you have a sustainable value proposition in the future.
Performance is key. Investors are looking for return.
Yeah.
And so you created this organization, took a big pivot back in 2018 to put a mark in the sand to say we are going to be
a world leader in sustainable value creation.
That's big. And you took an existing fund and said, we're going to pivot. Yeah. This is where we're going. Can you share that journey a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we set our vision to be a world leader in sustainable value creation. And we don't have hybrids. It's not about being the number one or being the best and the brightest, but it's having the size of the capital under management that we do. We also have the ability to lead and show the way forward. So that's the leadership part of it. It's the 240 billion is divided on approximately 100 mutual funds, so they use its funds. So it's a retail customer. We're not an asset owner. We're an asset manager. So we need to have the customers on board. The good thing in Sweden is that it has actually been the institutional investors that have been driving the sustainability forward. So it started with the institutions in Sweden, and then the retail customer, they sort of got it for free as we moved the capital. But it wasn't an easy, it's been a bumpy road. I mean, we started to transform. And I think the different thing we did in the Nordics is that we did not set up a new fund saying we're sustainable because we have this little niche thematic SDG fund. What we did is that we went after the bulk of the capital. So we took the existing capital in the existing funds and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to transform them. And I know there's a lot of talk, and especially when I meet US investors, about the fiduciary duty and how that cannot be changed and at the customer demands. But what we did is that we changed the fiduciary duty. We worked with the FSA, we worked with our customers, and we changed it. And when it comes to performance, I mean, our funds are performing amazingly well. We have one of the best global funds in the world. So it's not, it's a good combo, and you can combine it all.
You have some pretty significant targets. If you look at your 2025 target and the net number there,
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a
Yeah.
little bit in the journey and
Yeah.
where you are with that?
Absolutely. And then, I mean, we set the vision where we want to be the world leader. But then, I mean, you have to put targets on it to actually measure whether you're on the right path. So we put two very aggressive climate related targets. One is that all of our fund capital should be Paris aligned by 2025, and that we should be net zero by 2040. And the good thing, of being in my position, is that you can set a direction, but I can't do it. I had no idea how to do it, and we didn't know how to achieve it. We didn't even know how to measure it when we set the targets. So I think it's all about being very, very brave and bold, set the targets, and then you just get the smartest people around to actually figure out how to do it. So the innovation that we created in Swedbank Robur because of these targets is amazing. I mean, people are looking to us on our methodologies. We're having the Swedish Riksbank coming to us to see what's your method and process? How do you calculate the CO2 emission of collateralized bonds using the PCAF model in Europe?
But there was some incentive. You've incented some people to hit these targets too, right?
Yeah, I did, and I think that's the second thing. I mean, you can come far. I think the longest way with core values when you share a vision. But in order to actually like sort of tip the needle, what we did is that we changed the entire incentive structure for portfolio managers. So I compare it with, with you're driving a car and you have this big front. The window in the front is pretty big, and you have this little mirror for the back view mirror. And so financial performance in the portfolio managers weighs 50% and sustainability factors weighs 50%. So, I mean, the rear view mirror, that's the 50% on the financial performance. But I mean, if you really want a change, then you need to actually make an incentive for the portfolio managers to be brave enough to take a stake into the future. So we're measuring that thoroughly, and it's created, and I mean, it's so much education. You used to, before you had to do the financial numbers. Now we sort of expect them to, you need to know about clean energy and human rights, and you need to know about finance for the biodiversity pledge that we joined. How do you ask these questions? Governance. So, I mean, it's a lot of learning going on in the organization as well. But when we changed that incentive structure, it made a huge impact, and it's I think it's the best month and a half of the year, because me and Pia Hawk, the CIO of Robur, who was here before on stage, in November and the beginning of December every year, we meet every single portfolio manager, and they tell us their sustainability story. They tell us the largest sustainability risk in their mandate. They tell us how they have attacked it. They tell us what dialogues have they had with the companies with those high risks. What are the different sustainability metrics that are relevant for their fund? And it's like an ISO mark. I mean, you have to improve every single year. So you can't just content with what you did last year. It's a continuous improvement, and it's so interesting. And I wish I had a photographic memory so that I can just recite everything they're telling us, because it's amazing. And the commitment and engagement they show, I think that's how you really drive change.
You've had a very significant impact in this broader community. Have you any thoughts or ideas, call to action for your peers, or even some of maybe the market incentives? We were chatting earlier about some of the exchanges, and independent of political policy, can some of these other organizations accelerate some of this accountability?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done. I think that international collaborations within investors are very important. We share knowledge. I think if all investors started to ask questions with the companies when they have their meetings with the companies about sustainability criteria, that would also push the needle forward. I think it would be amazing if the stock exchanges actually had a process for sustainability criteria before you were even able to list yourself in a stock exchange. I think the index providers, I think that, because right now, if you look at, again, if you take the US numbers, 80% of all the capital that goes into the market is through passive investments. So right now, it's good enough. You get sort of check, I'm listed on a stock exchange, and then you welcome into an index, and then money starts pouring in. So I think, and so if the index providers also put some serious, I mean, sustainability criteria, and those should not be mixed up with ethical criteria. But if poor governance, and I mean, there's a lot of criteria that I think that we as humans share worldwide. Look at the global compact principles. I mean, they're kind of easy to follow. I think most people will sort of tick off that, yeah, I don't like slavery, child labor, serious corruption, etc.
Are there any examples where either in part or where it's nudging towards some criteria or a stronger framework that might incent that or move it?
But I think the European Union, I mean, they're really pushing it with their new taxonomy, CSDR, and also, I mean, we're putting on this. There's so many acronyms, CS, triple D, I think, where you actually have to do the due diligence through all the supply chains all the way to the cores. I mean, there's a lot of regulations coming, but I think that to speed it up and just make it easier, if we on the consumer side sort of took larger responsibility.
Perhaps thinking of and about, you described it's been a bit of a bumpy road, and I'm sure it has, and I expect it'll be a little bumpy going forward. What might be some of the learnings from that bumpy road in terms of who you needed to get aligned and around? You and I spoke a little bit earlier about media and the influence of media and sometimes the lack of knowledge and education in this area. That sustainability and performance go together.
Yeah. No, I think that, not sure how it's been over here and in Canada, but in Sweden, when sustainability started, it was more about the ethical funds. So they sort of got like a bad reputation from the beginning. It's like, you're not going to tell me what I should invest in the defense industry or not. So, and that's actually been a challenge. I think that still 50% of all the panels I join, I always get the question, so Liza, what about financial performance?
Yeah.
How much do you have to sort of
Hit the target.
Yeah. And I'm like, are we still talking about that? I mean, we're showing amazing performance. And no, we don't invest in companies that where we have core values that completely differentiate. And I think that's for any investment house. If you set your core values, and maybe, I mean, I think everybody should have a no-go zone. I can go this far, but really, I don't do serious corruption or child labor. Or, I mean, it's kind of easy to put sort of a bare minimum on what you would invest in. But we don't see that. So,
To what extent do you see boards of directors becoming more literate, more understanding of sustainable investing?
um, in Sweden, we are currently working in Sweden, there's a process where the largest owners form a nomination committee, and the nomination committee selects potential board members that then are elected on the AGMs. So currently we work in 110 nomination committees, and we have a huge impact as investors. So the names that we put forward, we interview almost all the board members in the companies in we invest in Sweden, and we put sustainability on their agenda. We also try to provide them with heat maps because we know their industries and we know their peers and we know where some of the major risks are. So, Alan, would you like to sit on the board? Are you aware of that in this area, in this business? I mean, you need to look at the supply chains from X, Y, Z. So it's about how we as investors can actually have a huge impact on the board composition. And I think that Swedish boards are, they're really, I think they're getting on top of it, and they are pushing the sustainability agenda. And we're trying to work with that through the international AGMs as well, where we vote. And I mean, we read all the suggestions for the AGMs, and which were in investment, and we invest globally worldwide. So definitely, we're seeing a change, but it could go faster.
It's slow. We have just a couple of minutes left, and perhaps building on the momentum. There's an awful lot going on geopolitically right now. I
Yeah.
don't have to explain that. Thoughts, views on how do we maintain some of this momentum so that some of these political distractions don't take away from
Yeah,
your mission?
good question, and very troublesome world situation. I just think that you need to keep your long-term focus, and try not to be too distracted. I think, yeah, long-term focus and stay on the path. And but then, I mean, the geopolitical situation also has a huge impact on some products and how we think about products in the future as well. But investing for the global mega trends,
Yeah.
seeing the opportunities there, and seeing where our investments can actually help and build more profitable companies in a sustainable way. I think there are lots of opportunities. It's easy to only see the dark side right now with everything that's going on, but try to see the glass as half full.
And on that note, we're so grateful that you've taken time to join us today. Hope you enjoyed your birthday.
Did.
And it sounds like you had a lot of fun watching the Boston Celtics get beat by our Toronto Raptors. Thank you for all that you do, the vision, the passion, and the leadership that you bring to investing in sustainability. With that, thank you all. And Lisa, thank you.
Thank you all for listening.